Imagine waking up one morning, turning on your tap, and nothing comes out, not a drop. Now imagine that happening in a city of 15 million people. That is not a scene from a dystopian film. That is Tehran, right now. Iran's president stood before parliament and said something no modern leader should ever have to say. If it doesn't rain, we will ration water. If it still doesn't rain, we may have to evacuate the capital.
Iran's capital, Tehran, is reeling under a severe drought this year, one of the worst crises the country has seen in decades. Hundreds of people gather to pray for rain as rainfall in the capital has this year been at its lowest level in a century. The government has reportedly decided to cut off water supplies periodically to Tehran's 10 million strong population to limit consumption, as there is severe water shortage. President Masoud Pezeshkian had cautioned that without rainfall before winter, Tehran could face evacuation, though he did not elaborate. Tehran, situated on the southern slopes of Alborz Mountains, typically experiences hot and dry summers that are alleviated by autumn rains and winter snowfall.
The capital of a nation of 86 million people. This is not just drought. This is not just sanctions. This is not just misfortune. This is structural collapse. Tehran's 5 main reservoirs are sitting at just 13% capacity. One of the major dams is at 1%. 1%. That's not low. That's empty with a memory of water. And here's the thing. People can tolerate politics. They can tolerate inflation for a while. They can even tolerate repression, but they cannot tolerate thirst. That's where this really begins. Because what is happening inside Iran right now is not simply protest. It's not ideology. It's not slogans. It is biological survival. The protests that erupted across Iran in early 2026 were triggered by economic collapse. The currency lost around 60% of its value in less than a year. Food inflation hit 64%. Families who were barely managing suddenly couldn't afford bread. Iran's own meteorological authorities are now using the phrase water day zero. That's the point where supply systems simply stop functioning. Scientists aren't even calling it a crisis anymore. They're calling it bankruptcy, because Iran has spent water it does not have and cannot repay. Between 2003 and 2019 alone, the country lost an estimated 211 cubic kilometers of groundwater. That's not a shortage, that's annihilation. Aquifers that took thousands of years to fill are gone. And here's the cruel part. They are not coming back in our lifetime, or our children's lifetime. This isn't a bad season. This is irreversible damage. And now the ground itself is collapsing. In some areas, land is sinking 20 to 30 centimeters per year. That's 40 times the average rate in developed countries. In Tehran, the ground is sinking up to 25 centimeters annually. That means roads crack, airport runways warp, rail lines bend. Ancient mosques in Isfahan are splitting. Bridges are fracturing. The land beneath them is literally giving way. Iran is not just running out of water. Iran is sinking, physically. The earth is collapsing because the water that once held it stable has been drained out. Over 90,000 square kilometers of territory are affected. And yet, for decades, instead of fixing this, the regime built missiles. Now here is where the story turns from tragedy to something darker. Over the past 3 decades, Iran built roughly 600 dams. 600. In one of the driest regions on Earth. These projects were worth billions. They were pushed by powerful insiders, many linked to the Revolutionary Guard's engineering arm. The same organization that builds ballistic missiles built a water empire. And the result? More evaporation, less downstream flow, faster aquifer depletion. They accelerated the destruction of their own water supply. It made fortunes for contractors. It drained the country dry. A survey in 2025 found that 75% of Iranians blame domestic mismanagement for the water crisis. Not drought, not sanctions, not Israel, their own government. Only 14% blamed natural causes. Only 4% blamed sanctions. That's not foreign propaganda. That's public opinion inside Iran. The people have made their judgment. And here's the scale of dysfunction. Leaky pipes mean more than 40% of treated water never reaches a household. The agricultural sector consumes 90% of Iran's water and then loses up to 70% of that through inefficient irrigation. It's like pouring water into a bucket filled with holes, except the bucket is the country. And now, entire lakes are gone. Lake Urmia, once one of the largest salt lakes in the world, has nearly disappeared. What remains is a salt flat. The Hamun wetlands reduced to dust. The energy crisis is tied to the water crisis. When power goes out, water pumps stop. No water, no elevators, no refrigeration, food spoils. For younger Iranians, power cuts also mean no internet, no VPNs, no access to the outside world. Factories shut down, workers lose jobs. This isn't separate crises. It's one system breaking down. Water, electricity, economy, infrastructure, all connected. Then the air turned toxic. In January 2026, Tehran ranked as the most polluted city in the world. More than 350 deaths linked to worsening air quality in just 10 days. Every year, around 59,000 Iranians die prematurely from air pollution. That's not politics. That's suffocation. The drying of forests released dust storms that choke cities hundreds of kilometers away. So now, Iranians cannot drink clean water, cannot breathe clean air, cannot stand on stable ground, cannot rely on electricity, cannot afford food. And when they protested, they were shot. By early January, protests spread across all 31 provinces. All 31. There was no safe province left for the regime. Khuzestan, Isfahan, Tehran. These weren't random hotspots. They were water collapse zones, the places where groundwater had failed, where subsidence was worst, where taps ran dry. This wasn't ideology driving people into the streets. It was thirst. And the regime responded the only way it knows how: force. Human rights groups reported thousands killed, tens of thousands detained, internet blackouts, mass arrests. The president later apologized for the crackdown, an apology for a massacre, and yet he does not control the guns. The security forces remain loyal to the system, not the reformist face at the podium. Here's the deeper question. What happens to a regime that cannot provide water to its capital city? Water is the most basic function of a state. Not ideology, not missiles, not slogans, water. When a government cannot provide it, legitimacy cracks. And when legitimacy cracks, regimes fall. Intelligence assessments now suggest regime fragmentation is no longer unthinkable. Because when a president publicly admits the capital might need evacuation, that is not policy, that is state failure. And yet, at the same time, the regime continues threatening America. Ballistic missiles, regional war warnings, military posturing, a country collapsing from within, pointing weapons outward. It's a dangerous combination, because history shows that governments under internal pressure often look for external confrontation. Iran is approaching water day zero. Reservoirs at 13%. Ground sinking 25 centimeters per year. 70% of groundwater gone. 19 provinces in drought. Food inflation at 64%. Currency collapse. 75% of the population blaming the regime. All 31 provinces rising. This is not just environmental collapse. This is systemic exhaustion. The coming months will answer a question that affects not just Iran, but the entire region. Will water finish what protesters started? Or will the regime survive long enough to drag the region into something far more dangerous? Because when a nation of 86 million people runs out of water, the consequences do not stay inside its borders. What's happening inside Iran is not just about dry taps and sinking ground. It's about power. Who holds it? Who loses it? And what desperate men do when they feel it slipping. When a government can't provide water, electricity, food stability, it faces a choice: reform or double down. Iran's leadership has chosen the second option. The Revolutionary Guard didn't just build weapons, it built dams, it drilled wells, it awarded contracts to itself. Over 660,000 legal wells exist in Iran. Another 360,000 are illegal. Let that number sit with you. More than 1 million holes drilled into a dying water table. And in 2010, instead of closing illegal wells, the government legalized 30,000 of them in one stroke, accelerating depletion. That's not incompetence, that's structural corruption. And here's the dilemma. The men who drained the aquifers are the same men who command the guns. Reforming the water system means confronting the power structure, because Iran is not collapsing in isolation. At the same time, reservoirs are emptying. Tensions with the United States are escalating. Warships positioned offshore, ballistic missile tests, regional proxy conflicts. The regime continues projecting strength abroad, while weakness grows at home. And this creates a dangerous psychological dynamic. When leadership feels cornered internally, it often escalates externally. It creates a narrative of siege. Blame outsiders, shift attention, unify the population against a common enemy. The geographic overlap between water collapse and protest zones is not coincidence. Khuzestan, Isfahan, Tehran. These are areas where water shortages hit hardest. It wasn't foreign intelligence that connected those dots. It was geography. When people can't farm, can't shower, can't refrigerate food, they stop fearing slogans. They start demanding solutions. And yet, the response was bullets. Internet shutdowns, mass arrests, thousands reportedly killed in a matter of days. The numbers are staggering. And even if we debate exact figures, one fact remains clear. The regime did not negotiate. It did not pivot. It suppressed, and suppression can buy time, but it does not fix aquifers. It does not repair subsiding land. It does not rebuild ancient water channels. It does not lower food inflation. It simply freezes the tension. Now consider the environmental multiplier effect. Air pollution killing tens of thousands annually, forests dying, dust storms increasing, agricultural yields falling, energy blackouts intensifying. Each crisis feeds the other. Water shortages reduce power generation. Power shortages disrupt water pumping. Economic collapse increases poverty. Poverty reduces resilience. It becomes a loop, and loops are hard to break. China, heavily invested in energy partnerships, does not want instability disrupting supply routes. Russia, balancing its own pressures, values strategic alignment. The United States monitors both the humanitarian dimension and the military posture. Israel watches missile sites. Gulf states watch the Strait of Hormuz. Everyone sees the same paradox: a regime internally strained, externally defiant. But here is one certainty: Iran is approaching water day zero. Reservoirs critically low, ground sinking, lakes gone, food prices soaring, millions blaming leadership, a president acknowledging the possibility of evacuating the capital. You don't hear that in stable systems. You hear that when foundations crack. And foundations in Iran are cracking, slowly, visibly, irreversibly in some cases. The regime launched its revolution in 1979, promising sovereignty and dignity. Nearly 5 decades later, it faces a crisis not from foreign invasion, but from environmental exhaustion and institutional mismanagement. A nation that once engineered underground aqueducts thousands of years ago now struggles to maintain modern pipelines. It's a bitter irony, and history is full of irony. Empires fall from overextension. States weaken from neglecting essentials. Water is essential. Air is essential. Electricity is essential. When those fail, politics follows. The coming months will be decisive. Will the leadership pivot? Will external tensions escalate? Will protests resurface with even greater intensity? Will migration begin quietly, then accelerate? No one can say with certainty, but one thing is clear: Iran's crisis is no longer just political. It is ecological, economic, structural. And when multiple systems fail at once, the margin for error shrinks rapidly. Now I want to hear from you. Do you believe Iran's leadership can reform in time? Or has the damage gone too far? Is this the beginning of long-term transformation or the start of regional instability? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this analysis valuable, support the work, like the video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel to stay updated as this story develops.